So I want to talk about the Owen Hart tournament and my feelings about that. And this is going to be regarding the men's. I just did a video about the women's. So in the first group, you have Will Ospreay versus Kevin Knight, and the winner between them is going to face either Brody King and Konosuke Takashita. So automatically, this is very predictable because I really feel it's going to be Will Ospreay winning this part. I'm not sure who's going to win between Brody King and Takeshita, but it's very predictable that Will Ospreay is going to win. And I actually would say that this is a very bad group of people. Like Will Ospreay absolutely deserves to be there. He's a main event player. They need him to open like AEW television shows or have the 9 o'clock main event or the main event. I really think that Ospreay's your guy. He absolutely deserves to be there. Horrible, horrible, horrible choice for Kevin Knight because he just joined the company. He's a small body person. And I think they said he was trained by Lee Johnson or somebody from Ring of Honor, really. So, and he's a small body person, just to reiterate. So it's almost like you have an X Division guy. It's almost like if you had it's almost like you have like Ely Skipper or Suicide or somebody else from the TNA X Division roster, in like a tournament in the Bound for Glory tournament. It just doesn't really go. I think in WWE terms, this would be almost like if you had Ricky Starks in a tournament for WrestleMania to face John Cena or Cody Rhodes. Let's say if you had a tournament and the winner of that tournament faces Cody Rhodes. You would have, it's almost like saying, hey, you're going to have Ricky Starks versus John Cena. Most people don't know who Ricky Starks is, even though he has some popularity to him. You get what I'm saying? Nobody knows who Kevin Knight is on the AEW stage. The same way you have to familiarize Ricky Starks to the NXT audience. And that's not a rib against him. That's just, a parallel saying that Kevin Knight does not deserve that spot. It's a stupid spot for him. Quite honestly, if they had Josh Alexander and they did a promo package showing what he did in TNA wrestling and his first match with Will Ospreay and other things like that, I would say that's a better choice. On the other side, Brody King's not a good person to have because he's been losing a lot. He recently lost to Kyle Fletcher, so it's almost like, is it the House of Black or the House of Black Sheep, because they keep losing too much. And then you also have Konosuke Takashita, and the problem with him is that he doesn't talk on the microphone, so he doesn't have a main event feel. And also, he is one of those people that he will job a lot, so they make him lose way too much, really, especially he's kind of like Will Ospreay's jobber. So, and then also too, if you want like to have a match at Double or Nothing, I don't think I don't think Takeshita is that much of a draw. He's a really great professional wrestler. I think he really deserves to be in like a contract for the world heavyweight title type of match because that way you have something unpredictable. But he does not deserve to be like a contender for the AEW championship. So it's very clear in this bracket it's going to be Will Ospreay, and I think they're going to do Will Ospreay versus Takeshita because honestly that's a Dave Meltzer match, and that's what AEW likes really. So I think the first bracket I would say that there's many people who should not be there. I really think that the only person that should be there is Will Ospreay. I would actually have Powerhouse Hobbs. I would put MJF in there. And I would also put like Samoa Joe or Swerve Strickland, or it would be like Swerve Strickland or John Moxley in there, whoever loses. And I would also, even put like maybe a Chris Jericho in there because Chris Jericho is a top heel right now. People don't like that he's dominating or he's like, he's trying to like, be an arrogant type of champion. So there's a bunch of people that you could have in that spot. But I don't think, Kevin Knight, Brody King, and Takeshita deserve it. Will Ospreay rightfully deserves it. In the next bracket, you have Mark Briscoe, Kyle Fletcher, Adam Page, and a mystery person. So you have only two good options. Mark Briscoe is a bad option. He loses way too much. He's jobbing to Kyle Fletcher. And then also you have a mystery person. And I think a lot of people are going to say Darby Allin. And that would be a very bad choice because a lot of people have been saying it's going to be Moxley versus Darby. And then also it would make a lot of sense because when they had the match between Ospreay and Darby Allin, what happened? That Darby beat Ospreay. So long-term booking says, you know what, they have to do a rematch. And that'd be that really. But I don't think that he deserves it because he's climbed Mount Everest. And ultimately, the company went downhill when he was selfish enough to go climb Mount Everest. So it's almost like saying, hey, you know, the company went down. They had to come up with the Death Riders thing. And it's just really just to delay Darby being champion. You know, I think what should have happened was Darby should have waited another year. He should have been champion. He should have dropped the title at Double or at All In, and you could have had a heel or somebody else. And then what you do is have Darby, you know, use his dropping the title to climb Mount Everest. That's what I would have done. Not just like, okay, you know what, you're going to do it now, and then the company's going downhill with the Moxley storyline. So I don't think he deserves it. And then also, too, it says something if you're going to go disappear and risk your life and do this project. And it also says something when it's like, oh, well, I've been gone for almost like half a year now. And then he's going to come back and then he's going to win, really. So, you know, he got like a 6-month vacation. So it doesn't send a good message. So I don't think that Darby Allin should get it. I honestly think it should be either Swerve Strickland, Jon Moxley, or MJF. It should be one of those three. That would be like the right choice, really, because they've been former champions, and it would say something if Swerve had to go through the gauntlet. And then the other thing that I will say is Adam Page deserves it. He's been a top heel, and he's kind of been like, you know, on a he's been on like a warpath. So I really feel he deserves it. He would be a great champion. And I think that he's going to do a way better job than the first time, you know, because it was cut short for to make CM Punk the champion. And then also, too, Kyle Fletcher 100% deserves it. He's actually, in my opinion, one of the best choices in this because you need to kind of establish him. He needs to go after the World Heavyweight title, and you need to kind of, you know, establish that. I would even want to see like Swerve versus Kyle Fletcher. That would be a very interesting, you know, that would be a really, really interesting show. And I also think that would be a good main event because you're having a new guy versus you're having two like people who are established in AEW, really. So I really think that would be a good main event. But I really think that Ospreay is going to win this whole thing. Briscoe, as I said, he loses too much. So I also will say this, that I think that my money would be Ospreay versus Takeshita. You get the Dave Meltzer match. And I really predict that it's going to be Darby Allin versus Kyle Fletcher. And then it's going to be Ospreay versus Darby. And then Darby's going to win. Because I think that with AEW, they're very, very predictable. And that's who's going to win, really. I really think that for the mystery person, you know, it's a hard dynamic because it really depends on if Swerve or Moxley's going to win. If you have Swerve lose, if you have Swerve win, then you have to make sure it's like an MJF or another heel person. And that would be the way to go, really. And I really think that if you want to sell out All In, if you really want to like sell out Double or Nothing, you can do Swerve. You can do Will Ospreay versus MJF Part 2, and then have MJF versus Swerve Strickland. I think that would be a great main event for AEW All In. Or you can do Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay, and I think that would be the better main event. Or you can do Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley, but that would be the bad one because it's very predictable. And it's like what I said, you're rewarding somebody who's been gone for like 6 months. And they made Death Rider faction partially because, Darby went on vacation, really, So that's all I gotta say about it. I think that definitely they need to just always have main event people and believable people to be in these tournaments. Like I've said, Kevin Knight does not deserve to be there. Briscoe loses too much; he doesn't deserve it. I also will say that I don't feel Brody King deserves it because he's been booked poorly. Takeshita, I can agree that deserves to be there because he did a great job with the international title. He has really great matches. And then I also agree with Kyle Fletcher being there. And then, with the women's one, I've said that before, that I really think that, Mercedes, Athena, Harley Cameron, Julia Hart, Chris Statlander, and Thunder Rosa, they all deserve to be there on certain levels, really, because they've all kind of established themselves. But with the men's, I feel like there's way too many people who lose too much. So I really feel like it's just to get either Darby the shot or Will Ospreay the shot. But I hope with the mystery person, they really think about it and say that it should not be Darby Allin. It should be 100%. It really, really should be MJF, because I think Swerve versus MJF would be an excellent main event. They talk great in the microphone. There's a lot of great things that you can do with that. Or they can be stubborn as hell and be like, hey, no, we're going to do Moxley versus Darby Allin and be predictable, So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Owen Hart tournament with who they choose.